Michael knelt in the cold, dim room, the wooden floor creaking beneath his weight as he whispered, "If anyone can hear me, I don't know if I'm worth saving." His voice cracked with a painful mixture of despair and longing. The small candle flickered, stretching unnaturally as though pulled by invisible hands. The air thickened, a metallic taste rising in his throat, heavy enough to make him tremble. Shadows bent and twisted against the walls, moving against the natural glow. A low vibration crawled beneath the floorboards, rattling the old nails. Michael's breath quickened, his pulse hammering against his chest as the candle erupted into cold white fire. The room flooded with light, forcing him to shield his eyes, his body rigid with fear. From the blaze a tall silhouette formed, its shimmering outline like molten silver. The silence pressed into his chest until a voice thundered within him. "You have been seen." The words carved themselves into his soul, leaving him breathless and shaking. Michael collapsed against the wall, chest heaving as the last rays of white light vanished like smoke. The candle lay smoldering, a pale thread of smoke rising in silence. His reflection in the shattered window looked back at him, eyes wide with disbelief. "Am I losing my mind?" he whispered, clutching his chest. The reflection trembled with the flicker of dying flame, a broken man staring back at himself. His pulse throbbed in his ears, louder than the silence that filled the room. For the first time in years, a faint flicker of hope cut through his despair, though fear gripped his soul tighter than before. Michael sat across from Reverend Thomas, his hands shaking as he retold the vision. The older man leaned forward, weathered face steady, eyes lined with compassion but clouded with caution. "If what you saw was true," Thomas said softly, "then you have been chosen." His words fell heavy, carrying weight beyond the room's silence. Michael's gaze dropped to the worn wood beneath his feet, shame battling with wonder. "Why me?" he whispered. "Why would God look at me?" Thomas folded his hands, the flickering lamp behind him casting a soft glow. "A calling rarely comes without a trial," he said gently. Claire leaned against the counter, her arms crossed tight, eyes sharp with disbelief. "Michael, this sounds insane," she said firmly. "You've been under stress for months. You're exhausted. Don't tell me you think this was divine." Michael's jaw tightened, pain etched across his features. "It wasn't a dream, Claire," he said, voice low. "I felt it in my chest. It marked me." She shook her head, frustration flashing. "Hallucinations feel real too. You're chasing ghosts, not God." Michael looked away, torn between defending himself and drowning in her doubt. Michael sat alone at the wooden table, his hands pressed against his forehead as tears blurred his vision. The silence pressed heavy, broken only by his ragged breaths. His voice cracked as he whispered, "Why me? If this was God, why would he look at me?" His shoulders shook under the weight of shame. "I've failed too many times," he said, grief flooding through him. The candle stub flickered weakly, casting uneven light across his tired face. His heart pounded with guilt, each beat reminding him of mistakes that chained him. Still, beneath the despair, a small spark refused to die. Michael walked slowly through the abandoned chapel, the hollow echo of his footsteps stirring dust from the cracked wooden pews. His chest tightened as stained glass windows threw fractured colors across the empty floor. He whispered to himself, "I shouldn't be here, but something pulls me back." His eyes lifted toward the altar, its cloth frayed, the cross tilted. Memories clawed at him, moments of failure replaying with each step. He felt unworthy, yet unable to turn away. The silence pressed in like a heavy weight, but deep within the emptiness, a fragile spark of hope flickered. Reverend Thomas stood with hands folded, his calm eyes watching Michael struggle to find words. "Spiritual trials are given to the broken," he said, his tone steady but kind. Michael's gaze darted downward, shame pressing heavily on him. "Then why does it feel like punishment?" he asked, his voice raw. Thomas leaned closer, the flicker of candlelight casting shadows across his lined face. "Because pain shapes the soul," he said softly. "It isn't meant to destroy you, but to awaken what you've buried." The words stung, but they carried truth Michael couldn't ignore. Claire's voice cut sharply as she leaned forward across the table. "If God wanted you, he wouldn't let you fall this far," she said, her eyes burning with frustration. Michael flinched, words caught in his throat. His chest rose and fell rapidly, torn between anger and despair. "You didn't see what I saw," he said firmly, his voice breaking at the edges. Claire slammed her palm against the wood, trembling. "No, I didn't, because it wasn't real." Her breath came heavy, but beneath the hardness, fear lingered in her eyes. Michael froze as the room darkened, the faint whisper of something unseen brushing across his ears. Shadows shifted unnaturally in the corners, pulling away from the light. His skin crawled, and he swallowed hard, trying to steady his breath. A cold laugh rippled through the silence, so faint it almost dissolved into the air. His heart pounded violently as he whispered, "Who's there?" No answer came, only the subtle, crawling presence that seemed to feed on his doubt. For a moment, Michael felt his knees buckle, the weight of despair nearly toppling him. The door creaked, and Daniel stepped inside, his eyes carrying the heaviness of someone scarred by the past. Michael straightened, startled, as Daniel's voice broke the silence. "I know what it feels like to believe you're beyond saving," he said, his tone trembling but sincere. Michael stared, uncertain, but Daniel's gaze didn't waver. "I was there too, drowning in my shame, but grace pulled me out." Michael's breath shook, and for the first time he felt less alone in the weight of his struggle. Michael lay awake in the dark, the faint hum of night, broken by a whisper that seemed to crawl inside his head. "You are already mine," the voice hissed, cold and mocking. His eyes widened, searching the empty room, but nothing moved. His chest rose and fell rapidly, sweat dripping down his temple despite the chill. The shadows deepened, curling like smoke around the corners. He clutched the sheets tighter, heart hammering in panic. "Leave me alone," he muttered, voice trembling. The laughter returned, low and cruel, filling the silence with suffocating dread. Reverend Thomas placed a steady hand on Michael's shoulder as they sat in the chapel. "You are at war," he said firmly. "Spiritual warfare is real, and it preys on the weak moments." Michael swallowed hard, his eyes darting to the floor. "It feels stronger than me," he admitted. Thomas straightened, his lined face lit by flickering candles. "Then we fight with prayer, not with fear." His voice carried quiet authority, but a flicker of concern lingered in his gaze as he studied Michael's trembling hands. Claire stormed into the hallway, her face pale, her breath shallow. "I saw something," she gasped, clutching the wall. Michael's eyes widened, his pulse quickening. "What did you see?" he asked. Her lips trembled. It wasn't real. It couldn't be. For the first time her confidence cracked, her rational world shaken. Michael stepped closer, desperation mixing with fear. Claire's eyes brimmed with confusion, her voice lowering. "It was there in the corner of the room, watching me." She shuddered, her body trembling. Daniel sat in the quiet of the chapel, his hands clenched tightly together, his voice breaking. "I thought I had escaped it," he confessed. Michael watched him with growing dread. "Escaped what?" he asked softly. Daniel's eyes welled with tears, guilt pressing on every word. "The despair, the old chains. I've slipped again." His confession hung heavy, echoing Michael's own fears. For a moment, Michael felt as though he were staring into a mirror of his own brokenness. Michael gripped the small candle from that first night, its wax cracked and brittle, the flame weak and trembling. He stared at it, breath shallow, as if the light itself reflected his fragile soul. Shadows wavered on the wall, flickering between darkness and glow. His voice broke as he whispered, "I don't know if I can hold on." The candle flickered wildly, as though wrestling between being extinguished and burning brighter. Michael's eyes filled with tears, the battle within him spilling into the fragile flame. Michael drifted into restless sleep, his body heavy but his spirit unsettled. Darkness gave way to a dream filled with golden haze, brighter than daylight yet softer than dawn. A figure emerged, tall and radiant, sorrow etched across its glowing presence. Michael trembled, struggling to find words. "Who are you?" he whispered, his voice echoing through the dreamscape. The figure's gaze pierced him, though it bore no eyes, only shimmering light. "I am sent to guide you," the voice resounded, both gentle and commanding. Michael's heart pounded, fear tangled with awe, as he fell to his knees. Michael's breath caught as the messenger's form shimmered closer, its voice resonating within him rather than around him. "Your scars are the proof of your calling," it declared, each word striking deep. Michael shook his head violently, tears streaming. "No, my scars are my shame. They are why I cannot be chosen." The messenger extended a hand of light, its brilliance illuminating every wound in his memory. "Your pain is not wasted. It has prepared you for what lies ahead." Michael wept, torn between rejecting the truth and collapsing into it. Claire bolted upright in her bed, her heart racing, her body drenched in sweat. A nightmare clung to her, too vivid to dismiss as imagination. She pressed a hand to her chest, whispering, "No, it can't be real." The shadows in her room seemed thicker, curling toward her like smoke. She gasped, her rational defenses crumbling for the first time. Trembling, she whispered, "I saw him too." Her voice cracked, the admission tearing through her pride. Fear mingled with awe, leaving her shaking in disbelief. Reverend Thomas sat alone in the chapel long after everyone had gone, his eyes fixed on the altar. His hands trembled as he clasped them tightly, breath catching in his chest. For the first time in decades, doubt seeped through the cracks of his faith. "What if I've been abandoned?" he whispered to the silence. The flickering candlelight cast uneven shadows, reflecting his inner turmoil. His head bowed, tears welled in eyes that had once carried certainty. His faith, though tested countless times, now trembled beneath the weight of the unseen. Daniel placed a hand gently on Thomas's shoulder, his voice steady though his eyes carried pain. "Even guides stumble," he said softly. Thomas lifted his head, surprised, tears lingering on his cheeks. Daniel's expression was weary, but strength flickered beneath his scars. "We are not chosen because we are flawless," he continued. "We are chosen because grace meets us in our weakness." Thomas exhaled shakily, his shoulders easing slightly. For the first time that night, he felt less alone in his doubt, his heart steadied by Daniel's truth. Michael's trembling hands opened a drawer he had not touched in years, pulling out a sealed envelope stained with age. His breath caught as he read the handwriting, a letter addressed to him from someone long gone. The words inside revealed a betrayal he had buried, a wound he thought forgotten. "Why now?" he whispered, voice breaking as tears blurred the ink. His chest tightened as guilt and anger warred inside him. The truth clawed open old scars, exposing the lie he had built his survival on. The silence in the room was deafening, as if even the air recoiled from the revelation. The air grew colder, shadows thickening as a shape stirred in the corner. The antagonist manifested, its form bending like smoke, yet edged with cruel sharpness. Michael stumbled backward, clutching the letter to his chest. "You see now," the voice hissed. "You were never chosen. You were abandoned." Fear gripped him as the dark figure loomed closer, feeding on his unraveling strength. His voice cracked, "No, I won't believe you," though doubt laced every word. The room pulsed with oppressive weight, the shadows clawing at him as he fought to hold on. Claire burst into the room, her face pale but her eyes blazing with determination. She saw Michael cornered, the dark form advancing. Her voice shook as she shouted, "Leave him alone." For the first time, her skepticism faltered beneath undeniable terror. Michael's eyes widened, astonished that she stood between him and the darkness. "Claire," he gasped, "you can see it too." She nodded, trembling, unable to deny the reality that shattered her logic. Fear clung to her voice, but she refused to step aside. Reverend Thomas entered, his voice commanding as he lifted a hand toward the darkness. "The truth must be faced," he declared, his tone steady yet urgent. Michael clutched the letter, heart hammering, as Thomas's presence filled the room with unexpected authority. "You can bury the past, or you can confront it and be free." The antagonist snarled, shadows writhing violently against the candlelight. Michael's knees buckled, his breath ragged, torn between surrender and the fragile possibility of redemption. Michael collapsed to the ground, the letter falling from his grip as his tears hit the floor. The weight of betrayal and guilt crushed him, yet something deeper stirred within. "I can't carry this anymore," he whispered, his body shaking. His hands pressed against the cracked floorboards as shadows closed in. He felt the pull of despair dragging him under, but somewhere inside, a faint voice urged him to rise. The battle raged in silence, the choice pressing down heavier than the darkness itself. The room shuddered as the antagonist's form spread wider, illusions filling the space with visions of Michael's failures. He saw himself breaking promises, pushing away those who loved him, collapsing in shame. "You are nothing," the voice hissed, each word like venom. Michael's knees buckled as the images surrounded him, choking the air from his lungs. His eyes darted from one haunting vision to another, guilt pressing in like chains. "Stop it," he cried, clutching his head, but the darkness only tightened its grip. His soul felt weighed down, drowning in despair that seemed impossible to resist. Reverend Thomas stepped forward, his body trembling yet his voice unyielding. "In the name of truth, you will not have him," he declared, raising his hands in prayer. His words echoed, cutting through the oppressive silence. The candles flickered violently, shadows fighting against the light. Michael lifted his gaze, eyes wide, as he saw Thomas standing firm despite the storm of darkness. The antagonist hissed, retreating slightly as the strength of the prayer clashed with its suffocating presence. Thomas's voice shook but did not falter, each word carrying more power than his frail frame suggested. Claire collapsed against the wall, tears streaming as she cried out, "I saw him too, and I can't deny it anymore." Her voice cracked, the disbelief that had once defined her shattering. Michael turned toward her, stunned by her confession, his heart swelling with a fragile hope. The antagonist screeched, its grip slipping as her words pierced the atmosphere. "Faith isn't just theirs, it's mine too," Claire whispered through sobs, her face streaked with both fear and courage. For the first time, Michael felt he was not alone in the battle. Daniel stepped beside Michael, his hand firm on his shoulder. "Your scars don't make you weak," he said, voice steady despite his trembling. "They make you stronger." Michael's eyes welled with tears as he looked at Daniel's weary but determined face. "I've carried mine too," Daniel continued, his tone breaking, "but grace carried me further than my shame ever could." Michael inhaled shakily, drawing strength from Daniel's presence. The darkness around them snarled, its power faltering as light began to break through. Michael rose slowly to his feet, the cracked candle still flickering weakly in his hand. His voice steadied as he faced the antagonist, shadows writhing with fury. "I am not beyond saving," he declared, his tone firm though his body trembled. The words carried weight, echoing as if etched into the very air. The flame in his hand blazed brighter, cutting through the suffocating darkness. The antagonist shrieked, its form unraveling under the force of his stand. For the first time, Michael stood tall, no longer bound by despair but lifted by conviction. The antagonist shrieked as the light from Michael's flame engulfed the room, unraveling its smoky form into fragments of shadow. The walls shook, the floorboards groaned, but the darkness could no longer hold. Michael stood firm, the cracked candle blazing like a torch in his hand. His voice was steady, no longer trembling as he declared, "You have no power here." The figure dissolved in a violent surge, its screams fading into silence. The air grew still, heavy with the lingering scent of ash, yet radiant with victory. Michael exhaled, his shoulders lowering as relief washed over him. Michael collapsed to his knees, his body exhausted, but his spirit trembling with awe. The divine messenger appeared once more, stepping forward with light, radiating like dawn. Its voice resonated within his chest, You are free." Tears streamed down Michael's cheeks as he whispered, "Why me?" The messenger's form bent closer, voice filled with grace. "Because you were never beyond saving." Michael's chest swelled with emotion, his body shaking with sobs of release. The light surrounded him like a warm embrace, softening every scar that once bound him. Claire entered quietly, her steps hesitant, her face pale with wonder. She saw Michael kneeling in the glow, his tears falling like rain. Her own eyes welled as she whispered, "I believe." The words left her lips with trembling conviction, fragile but real. Michael looked up, astonished to see her faith breaking through her fear. The divine messenger turned toward her, its radiance softening, as though acknowledging her courage. Claire placed a hand over her chest, overwhelmed by the truth she could no longer deny. Reverend Thomas entered behind her, his old eyes wet with tears, his lips trembling into a smile. "Faith is never wasted," he said softly. His voice carried relief, a shepherd's heart restored. Michael turned, seeing Thomas not as the unshakable guide, but as a man redeemed from his own doubt. Daniel stepped into the glow as well, scars visible but no longer heavy, his face lifted in peace. Together they stood, bound not by perfection, but by grace that had carried each of them through darkness. Dawn broke outside, the first golden rays spilling through shattered windows, painting the room in soft light. Michael rose to his feet, his shoulders no longer bent with shame. He stepped into the sunlight, eyes closed, his face at peace for the first time in years. The candle in his hand burned steadily, no longer flickering but glowing with quiet strength. He whispered, almost to himself, "I was never beyond saving." The silence that followed spoke louder than words, a closure that carried both finality and infinite hope.